Hello, everyone, and welcome to August. And this is going to be a fun month to really go after the Thomas Edison of last month, because now we're looking at you personally and how you can thrive going into across the bridge. No, we're not talking about ableism. We're talking about helping you to thrive, not based on someone else's telling you you have to work or telling you where to work or when to work or the fact that you should be able to work and you should be able to get a receptionist job because you can talk. That's ableism. That's people who don't clearly understand what you're capable of being or doing. Not only that, it doesn't take into account your interests. Because if you have some interest in what you're doing, you're likely to stay longer at a job. And as I go there, I have my wonderful guest who you've seen many times here, Wendy, who will be here helping me all 5 weeks because this is such an important topic. We're going to dive deep into all the different parts of getting a job, keeping a job, finding your allies, learning how to interview, and all different categories that have to do with you walking across this bridge and thriving, not surviving. But before I go there, with all the awesome autistic individuals that are out there in the world telling you what the traits of autism are, such as Paul McAlevin and Ryan Kelly, both in Australia, as well as Samantha Stein in the Netherlands, Sarah Hendricks in the UK, Temple Grandin here in the US, Wendy here in the US, in the schools, having been working in the schools, in that her faction. I want to tell you that the mission of the Astrid Bridge is not just to sit here and tell you what the traits of autism are, but to actually help you go across the bridge, back into society, doing what you do best, not what someone else thinks you do best. And we're here to help you. I'm going to help you connect with Wendy and others who might be able to just answer your questions and fix a problem that you might be experiencing, not fixing you. And before I go in and reintroduce Wendy or have Wendy reintroduce herself, I want to start off with a quote about jobs. Not every key fits every lock. Finding the right job is often about discovering the right door, not changing the key. And what that means is finding where you fit in to this world of opportunity, not telling you to conform to what others think is your right door. And that's an important part of this whole 5-week segment is we're not trying to get you to get any job. That won't work. That might work for a month. It might work for 6 months. It might even work for a year. But if you're not in something that really interests you, let's just say you love to be out running and you love sneakers and everything like that, it's not going to do you any good to find this bookstore job. That's not going to be where you are unless you happen to love books too. And that's a different situation. We're all about finding your strengths and finding where your key fits best. So before I go any further, I'd love to have Wendy reintroduce herself as one of my favorite people to have on my podcast. Go ahead, Wendy.
Well, hi, it's always good to be here on the bridge with you, Suzanne. Full disclosure, I'm not autistic. My late husband was, 2 of our children are. Most of the people I hired in the practice that I founded, adultautismassessment.com, were autistic therapists and assessors. But I myself am just quirky. So I just wanted to let you know. But this is a topic that is obviously dear to my heart. All the books that I've written have, since I retired from the schools, all my book. Oh yeah, that's my book. This is yeah, working. There it is too. Working While Autistic is the fifth book and probably the last book in the series, Adulting While Autistic. And it's so important to me because I know uh, how difficult it is for many, many autistic people to find the right job. And I love your quote about the key. And what it made me think is if you try to force a key into the wrong lock and you just keep pounding and try to force it, that's going to damage the key. And the key does not deserve that sort of treatment. So looking for the right fit, the best job for you, is that is the key. That's the answer.
It is. It is. And that's a great segue, by the way, Wendy, into my red flags and green flags. When I was writing my book, The Autistic Heart, I did a lot of red lights as warnings for all of you. So you could say, wait a minute, I gotta stop and think about this more. But in the terms of working, a red flag might be someone who thrives. If you hear from an interviewer that you're supposed to be able to work under pressure, I would say run. That's not exactly the thing that's going to set you up for success if you thrive under pressure. However, a green flag would be we believe and value sustained productivity, which means we want you to do your best work at a speed that is most comfortable to you. We're not going to judge you on metrics, which is what I just did in my last job. And I'm going to take a quick moment before I let Wendy comment on this to tell you about that. We're not, sometimes, especially for late diagnosed masking women, we'll go into a job with the belief, because everybody's told us we could do it, go in with the belief that we can maintain the metrics of everybody else. And then we find out that, well, because of the crowds, I used to work in a grocery store. I told you a number of times about this. Used to work in a grocery store, and I was a personal shopper. Well, if you're anyone like me and crowds and people congregating in the wrong spaces, that's an overwhelming feeling. And when you have the moral ethic that you're not going to run over the little old men or little old women that are walking through the store, now you get under pressure and then you're being timed on how fast you can do the personal shopping. That's not an environment that would really work for any of us, because you have the overwhelming pressure of time metrics. You have people that are in the way, keeping you from doing your job according to their standards, not your standards. I enjoyed helping the customers along the way, but they didn't allow time for that in the metric. And I would come to a point where people were just standing there. And if you're like I am, I don't like crowds. I don't like people just standing in the wrong places where I need to be. So you can understand that there are some jobs that are not meant for us, and we shouldn't keep pushing ourselves into being under pressure. We need to know, and I told this to my leader, and I told this to my ally, which we'll get to in a few moments, that if they were to count the number of carts or the number of orders I completed and celebrate that and not worry about how fast I picked up an item, we would have worked well together. If we can help our employers know that we work on how fast we, not how fast we get things, but when we accomplish a task, not how fast the task takes us. But that's where I want to go with that little anecdote. Wendy, go ahead and feel free to comment on both sections or whatever you feel comes to mind.
Well, excuse me, although we all know that every autistic person is different, just like everybody is different, there are a lot of traits that we all have in common. So there might be somebody who does thrive in that environment, but that's probably not the majority because that kind of stress is just difficult. Now, you had asked me to talk about the book and to share like some page numbers. And I want you
And
to
by
know,
all means.
yeah, I'm not trying to sell you guys my book. I mean, I would love it, but not everybody has money to go out and buy every book that might be of interest. So I hope you'll go to your library and ask your librarian for it because that's what libraries are for. I love libraries. I grew up in them, probably most of you did too. So ask your
Libraries
librarian.
do accept recommendations, so go
Yes.
ahead.
If they don't have it, they might have a sister library that does, that can send it to them, or they might buy it. And then you don't have to buy it. But I hope that you'll get value out of it because that's why I wrote it. I was hoping to be helpful. So in the chapter about the job search starts on page 31. And well, if you've read my book, you know that I can be silly sometimes, and I love acronyms where like a way to remember it is the first letter of the word stands for something in the topic. And this is one of my sillier ones, but I don't care. You know, that's who I am. And it's when you're on the job search, you want to be a VIP now, Jack. And a VIP, while it usually stands for very important person, in this case, it stands for volunteer, intern, and portfolio. If you can get a volunteer job, then they know your value. They know what kind of a job you can do. And did I tell you it's on page 31?
Mhm.
Um, if you can get an internship, it's great if you have a paid internship, but sometimes we have to, early in our career, work for free. But intern is like a step above volunteer. Often companies will hire their interns. Um, I'm sorry, I'm hearing an echo of my voice. Did something change? Sorry to interrupt, but it's throwing me off a little bit. Okay, thanks, you fixed it. Okay, so interning is like a step above volunteering. They're a little bit more likely to hire you when they have an opening because they know your work ethic. And then portfolio. You know, Temple Grandin wrote one of her books, she never got any of her jobs by interviewing for them. As a lot of autistic folk that I know are not necessarily good in interviews. Um, she always had a portfolio of her work. Her work spoke for itself because she knew her job. So she would just hand them a portfolio. And also somebody else would say to the boss of the new company, just give her a chance, just hire her. It's like basically ignore the interview. Just look at the work. That's where the value is. So having a portfolio can be really important. I want to just jump back to the interview for a moment because some people, including many autistic people, are actually really, really good at interviews. They can do that bit, but then sustaining that level of, you know, they might have had to prepare for a week and then recover for a week, but then the boss expects them to be at that level all the time. And that's where their challenge comes in, is they are okay with the interview, but it's exhausting to try to be at that level forever. So that's the VIP. VIP now. Now stands for network, online search, and work experience. People hate networking. I mean, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people hate that whole word. It's like, oh, I don't want to network. I don't want to go to parties. I don't want to try to hand everybody my business card. And you know, don't do that. Nobody wants somebody to hand them their business card every time they see them. So just don't. But if you can network in a way that's comfortable for you, to go to places, but then not necessarily try to be the used car salesman for yourself, but just respect your own level of how you want to present at the network situation and be at that level. And then don't beat yourself up if you're not a flag waving, you know, extrovert. It's okay. Um, Online search. Oh, I love an online search. There's so much you can gain online. You guys know that. I don't have to tell you. But but it's so much easier to go online than to, in the olden days, we used to go to newspapers and find the help wanted ads. Well, now it's a lot easier. So use your online search skills and work experience. If for your younger listeners, if you're still in school, there might be a work experience program for you. Um, then you'd have a person to help you get the job and to, kind of supervise you. A lot of special ed programs have this, sometimes regular ed also. So if it's available to you in your school, take advantage of that. That is going to be something on your resume that you had a job. By the time you graduate, you've already got some experience. So really take advantage of work experience opportunities. And now let's see, VIP now, Jack. Jack stands for job fairs, alumni, cold calls, and know someone. Job fairs can be scary. If you go to one like at a university or someplace, you walk in the door and it's like crammed with people and maybe tables and booths around with people crowding around trying to pick up brochures and leave off their portfolios. If you go to one, if you're like in a school that has these, when you first get there, kind of hang back and look around. Don't feel like you have to charge in, because you might first feel like, I just want to go home. And I was very shy when I was younger. So even though I wasn't autistic, I had some of those characteristics. I did not enjoy crowds or stress. That was just my preference. So look around, and then maybe on the fringes, you'll see a table where nobody's over there talking to them. That's where you want to go because they'll be happy to have somebody. Because maybe the big company tables are, everybody's wanting to go over to those, but this might be a little company that you might find a home in. So look for the tables that are lonely and not crowded. And then feel free to just go home. You might just talk to one and go home. Everybody else is going to spend 3 hours. You don't have to, because it is more exhausting for you than it is for every other person who's at that fair. And that's okay. Don't feel bad if you don't spend that much time. If you only talk to one table, you did that. You talked to somebody at one table. That was your job fair, and there's nothing wrong with that. And then alumni. If you went to the same school as somebody, that's good. And part of your online search, you can find out where the buses went to school. When I came out of college, I learned that a lot of the school districts in my area, a lot of the principals went to my college. And I like to think that that was a little bit helpful. I don't know if it was really helpful, but it was something to pay attention to because then you've got something in common. Cold calls are the worst. The C in Jack stands for cold calls. Nobody really wants to do that. If you do it, write a script for yourself. There might be some places where there is no online, like email us here, where the only option is a phone number, but you want to find out about working there. Write yourself a script, practice it, make that call, and then just take a break afterwards and give yourself, like, allow another, I don't know, hour, 2 hours, whatever you need to recover. You deserve that time because you did a very, very hard thing. When you make a cold call, that's not a little thing. And you might have friends or family members who can just do that all day long. Just pick up a phone and make a call, and then they go on to the next thing. It's okay that you don't just say, oh, that was easy. Now I'm going to go on. No, plan for it and plan for recovery time after a phone call. And finally, know someone. It's great if you know someone who has, who knows someone in your line of work. And maybe at the next family reunion, mention that this is what you're going for. This is the kind of job you're looking for, and see if anybody in your family or in your friend group, anybody that you know that knows someone can be a foot in the door for you and can help you get into that first job. But the job search, it is hard. And I don't want you to be discouraged if you find that you're not getting the job right away. You're doing really important hard work, and it's kind of normal that not everyone is going to be a yes. There's going to be a lot of no's along the way. You just check that off and say, okay, I got one of my no's checked off my list. I got another one. A lot of writers get a ton of rejection letters before they finally have somebody say, yes, we'll publish your book. A lot of actors get rejected all over the place. Fred Astaire, and I don't know if you young people remember Fred Astaire, famous dancer. His first audition, the notes said, can't sing, can't act, can dance a little. And he went on to become the Fred Astaire of, dancing. And he also sang and acted in all of his movies. And I thought he was charming in all of them. But he got rejected before he ever made it. And just don't let the rejection wear you down. It's a normal part of the job search. And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. And it doesn't mean now you'll never get a job. It's just checking off those to then say, okay, maybe the next one will be the one. And it might help you hone a little bit to say, what was it about this one? Was I trying for the wrong level? Was I trying for an upper level and I really don't have the experience yet? Or was it just not a good match? But my main message for you is don't feel bad about the struggle. The struggle is part of it, but it is not your fault when you don't get that first job or the second job. And it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you, because there's nothing wrong with you. You're doing great, and just hang in there and rest and recover when you need to. Do the things you love that feed your soul in between doing the hard things that you're doing. And then when you're ready, do that next hard thing.
Definitely. Oh, yeah. I have to speak for a moment to the rejection sensitive dysphoria.
Yeah.
And I understand that entirely. I've been there as well, many times.
Yeah.
And I think what we need to do is maybe put an incentive for yourself. And I found that I was listening to someone on YouTube who said, create a bingo card for yourself and tried to did an interview. That means I can go out and get a cup of coffee. Do a cold call. That means maybe I can go out and get a donut. So maybe instead of, no matter what the answer is, if you were to say, okay, I'm going to make 5 reach outs, or I'm going to send out 5 resumes, and that's equal to a nice Chinese dinner or whatever. I mean, you have to have it in your own budget, of course, but create a bingo card for yourself, or this equals that, so that if you do get the no, you can say, well, at least I enjoyed that cup of coffee, or at least I enjoyed that donut. But I understand rejection sensitive dysphoria. And even Jack Canfield, you were talking about Fred Astaire, Jack Canfield, when he was trying to get his chicken soup for the souls, I think he went with over 100 tries before he got the right one. And I sometimes have to realize that 1 or 2 publishers, that's just 1 or 2 publishers.
Yeah.
Keep going. Keep going. Now, as Wendy said, you do have to give yourself that rest time. Don't push through, because pushing through is masking and it's not taking your needs into consideration. And Wendy, when you were reading off that list, I'm like, yes, no, yes, yes, no, yes, no. I mean, I'm kind of, what I want to say is you have to know yourself first. That is the
Yes.
most important part. Know yourself first. And as you were describing different things, I don't like the interview because I don't like questions and answers, but I'll get up in front of a group of people and do a presentation because now I control my content. The portfolio idea, another excellent idea. I can't tell you, I barely had to talk at one of my interviews because I just laid out my portfolio. And we're going to get into that next week, even more so, to show you what a portfolio might look like and to give you ideas. But you can start to work on it now. Another thing that I was helping someone with is a 1-pager. Put a pretty nice picture of yourself write some of your accomplishments that you've already done, and then write out some of your skill sets. Attention to detail, willing to be determined, persevere through different activities. Be careful not to say, we'll meet your standards, because then you'll be held to that. But instead, know yourself, know your own strengths. I'm determined. I know I can try anything that's put in front of me. Persevere. I won't give up after 5 minutes. Detail oriented. I really like to look at all the parts and make sure that I'm doing it right. So one pager includes your picture and a couple of other things. We'll go through that and I'll show you an example next week of what that will look like. But as you were talking, I'm like, all right, the job fair. No, I agree. I don't like the crowds. But going to that table where nobody's standing, brilliant. Brilliant. I mean, yeah, exactly. Not every table is going to have a crowd around it.
Yeah.
And as you say, if you did one table and you talked to one group of people, consider that a check mark on your bingo card. You don't have to set yourself up for 3 unless you know you can do 3, but not 8. So know yourself. Now, what happens if you are a cartoon lover or an Xbox player, but you don't know your strengths? What if you're not sure how your strengths and your hobbies or your interests can go into a career? Now, I have some ideas, but I want to hear what Wendy has to say about this too. Taking an interest, a special interest, and understanding how it could be valuable to a company.
I think that's great because a lot of us have, important special interests, and they're not all, the interests themselves are not all related. I mean, a lot of people I know love video games. Very few jobs have any relationship to video games. But I also know people are, a lot of people are very good at researching their interests. So the research aspect of it, that is that is a valuable skill, able to research and find information online, find answers. If in your Dungeons and Dragons, if that's what you play, if you're good at trying different things, to solve a problem, then you can say, able to look at different, I don't know, you could probably put it better than I am, to look at different alternatives and problem solve based on that. If you're good at, and you've mentioned attention to detail and perseverance, sticking with the problem, not giving up. And a lot of autistic folk I know do not give up. They're not, in fact, it's sometimes to their detriment. They will keep trying at a job that is like beating them down, is hammering their key into that wrong lock and bending the key. But in the job, that's a plus for the employer to know that you can persevere. So I think these are important things. Think not about the specific, the small thing of what is that interest, but look at the bigger picture of what do I do in that interest. Maybe somebody writes blog posts about cats, but writing is a skill. So, you wouldn't say, I can write anything about a cat if your job isn't about cats. But you can say, I can write blog posts. They might want somebody to do blog posts. If you do a lot of social media, that might just be a hobby, but they might need someone to do social media for the company. So you could say experience with social media posting.
Exactly. Yeah, there are so many ways to pull apart what you have. I found out at this grocery store job that I was an inventor because every time I tried to do something with the tools that were provided, I'm like, oh, this could be made so much easier, faster. So I found out that I had innovative ideas, creative ideas to progress productivity. And all I was
Yeah.
doing was something that was unrelated, but I enjoyed the idea of, oh, I would, if I could change this whole system, that I would do. That's called innovative thinking. And knowing that
Yes.
when you can take a problem or take an interest and go with it, did you know that Legos could even mean that you are into architecture or building, able to build from raw materials? I mean, who would have thought that Legos and creating from raw materials might be a skill that's just underlying in play? Or maybe you like to draw comic books. That's a writing skill. Again, writing or drawing. You could go into an illustrator position. Just knowing that your special interests do have a skill associated with them or a strength.
Yes.
Now, maybe, and I have a couple of these that I wrote down, maybe you're still not quite sure how your love of reading comic books can translate. There is a VIA, all capital letters, VIA strengths survey that you can go into. There's also the Myers-Briggs survey where you can, it will spit out a whole list of where your strengths are, where your challenges might be. This way you can say, oh, I didn't even think about that being a skill. Yeah, I do that like all the time. Maybe you like to unload the dishwasher and you're very particular on how things fit into different containers. That's another skill. I know we wouldn't think about normal everyday activities as skills, but they really are.
They
I
really are.
love. Go ahead, Wendy. I'd love to hear
Oh,
what you have
well,
to
I,
say.
I was just saying this has been a really valuable time. I think I love the things you've shared and I'm happy to share the things I've had, but I really feel good about this as our jumping off point for this whole 5 week series. Um, uh, the things you said about looking for your strengths, and I didn't know that there was the VIA. And I'm familiar with Myers-Briggs, but is it available online that people can just take it for free online? I don't know.
I don't know. It might be something where you connect with your local community and see where it might be offered through a college program or something. I just know that I did the VIA online, and that's a
Okay.
lot easier to get a hold of. Myers-Briggs
Yeah.
was just one of the other ones that they
But
recommended.
it's a good one. And there might be, if you search Myers-Briggs online, you might find a place where you could take it, or you might find other similar ones like the VIA that will tell you your strengths. And then you can put those into your one sheet or into your resume or your portfolio.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's see. Now, the next thing we want to look at is, let's say you found your strengths. And let's say you want to look at A, B, C, and D employers to find out which one would jive best with your needs. Now, here are some things that you want to look for in their um not their classified per se, but in their must be a person who paragraph. If they were to say, must be willing to conform to metrics, well, as we said earlier, that might not be your cup of tea. However, they might say flexible work culture, which means you're not stuck to a desk. You're not stuck to the same desk all day long where you come and go. Now, for some, that might be great because it means no one else is dumping their stuff onto your desk. You have to know yourself. what is the environment that you would strive at? If you're someone that can't sit in one place for 8 hours, even 6 hours, that may not be something that you want. Each of these you have to take into consideration what's good for me, not what's good for autistic individuals, because you may have different needs that other people don't have, and vice versa. Just as Wendy said, some people may thrive on pressure. You have to know who you are. The next one is results over hours. This would be working at your pace and getting things accomplished. This is not meeting X number of items during X amount of time. This is your work is valuable to us because you put a lot of effort into it idea. The next one is remote versus asynchronous. Are they willing to let you work at home for a couple of days a week? Or are they willing to offer you a quiet corner desk versus in the middle of the whole open concept where you're going to get some noise, but you're not going to be in the center of the group hearing all the noise. So if they're willing to say part remote, part asynchronous, that it would be a good thing where your desk is not in the center of everybody. And the last thing is diverse thinking, meaning they're not looking for the status. Uh, what do I want to say? They're not looking for what most people would think. They want someone who can think out of the box. Just as I talked about with the invention of recreating this cart I was using. They want someone to think, well, I gotta, instead of, oh, I gotta deal with this piece of machinery or this item, hey, what would happen if you did this? You never know. Some people who are open to how to make the system better, but they haven't figured it out yet, might love your way of thinking. Might love, oh, we hadn't even thought about that. What do you mean? Attach a ladder right onto this cart. That would be wonderful. Why didn't we think of that? That's diversified thinking. Wendy, what do you think of this list?
I love it. I especially love when companies let people work from home, because two of the biggest challenges, as you and your listeners know, is sensory overload and social overload. And both of those are canceled out once you're working from home. So if what they want is a certain amount of work done and it's measurable, countable things that you can do, then they'll know you're doing it because it got done. I think employers worry about people so-called working from home because they think they won't do the work. They'll just be goofing off and having a day off. But if it's a job where there is a product, that something that must be completed, then you can say, I can complete this at home. And you might want to say, give me a trial, because a lot of people will be more productive at home and less productive, even if they're on the corner or the edge of a noisy place. And a lot of employers can't give everybody a private office. You know, you would work best in one because it's quiet. But then you've got all the people who say, well, I've been here for a long time and I didn't get a private office. And then all of a sudden, even if they say, well, this person is disabled, there's bad feelings among the coworkers. But when you can work from home, it is just an ideal situation. It's better than the
Absolutely.
headphones, better, yeah. So that's what I
Absolutely.
always hope for people.
Every so often, Wendy, I would say to my Starbucks leaders, I'd like to work from home today. And then I would say to the drive-through customers, tomorrow I'm going to be serving from my house. Just come by my house and I'd be happy to serve you coffee. But obviously, my point being with that, there are some jobs that's just not going to be realistic.
Yeah,
As in the
it's not
case of
possible.
being a drive-through
Yeah,
register person, you can't take the job. So it would
yeah,
be unrealistic to ask some companies
Oh,
if you can work from home
definitely.
because, particularly in retail, I mean, we have to
Yeah.
say that retail is not a work from home.
No,
But
it's when you have an office job where you have to do a thing on your computer. And if you have
yes,
a computer at home, you can do the thing on your computer. But a lot of jobs are people jobs. You have to be in the place. You know, if you're loading crates onto a forklift in a big warehouse, you have to be there to load the crate. So it
exactly.
definitely does not work for every job. But when somebody can get a job like that, ask to work from home. If you can prove that I will do the work, you know, I will turn it in on time, then working from home is a good option.
Totally. And next week, I have a great idea for that. So I'll remember to bring that
Oh,
in next week. I
okay. I'm
have
looking
an
forward to that.
I have an ebook for next week that I want to introduce. The
Yes.
next thing is tailor your resume. Now, this could be challenging to anyone who does not like computers, is to make 5 different resumes. But that's when maybe a one sheet that's tailor made for different kind of industries might be to your advantage and still give the same feeling as a 5 different resumes. I mean, I know your experiences haven't changed. So
Yeah.
recreating a resume for each type of industry you're interested in might not be the smartest idea. You can say, I have a resume, but I'd like to draw your attention to my one page instead. That might be the way to tailor it to a different industry. The next part is asking for specific needs without disclosing that you're autistic. And this is going to be where I really want Wendy to pipe in because, especially us who are late diagnosed, do not have a full diagnosis, nor do we choose to get one because of the expense of it. Now, I know Wendy is very familiar with the assessment, and she might have better ideas on how to go about getting our needs met without disclosing. Now, let's go back to my grocery store job for one moment, because what I was trying to say to them is, I know you're going to keep my metrics in your mind of how many I collect, but please don't tell me how many I have to collect. Allow me to accomplish a cart or X number of orders. You can keep in track on the computer. They had a system on the computer that said how many items I got. But I found for me, and this might be for you or not, that as soon as they told me how many items I had to collect or how fast I had to finish a cart, it seemed like my body slowed down because I was so much under pressure of time, because time is my stress, that instead of getting faster and getting motivated, I would slow down. Now, if they said, we'd love to see if you can get 3 carts done in the length of time that you're at our store today, well, now that's a completely different way of looking at the same job without stressing out the individual. So you could say to them when you go into a job, I know I can complete 2 cards, or I know I can complete 2 cases, or I know I can complete. Would you kindly keep that in mind of my completion rate, not what I have to do? What do you think of that, Wendy?
Yeah, I think you really know yourself. Um, I think the tricky part comes when you try to tell an employer at like an interview before they've hired you. If you try to tell them, basically it sounds like you're telling them how to do their job. If you say, don't tell me how many I have to do, maybe I'll, then they're thinking, well, it sounds like they're not going to do very much. So you might not want to lead with that. You might want to say, I work best with a positive, aspect rather than pressure. Um, but I think we do have to be careful when we're talking to employers, because some of them might not have a very good attitude towards employees. Some employers are not, some bosses and supervisors are not very nice. We don't know what kind of boss we're going to get. Some are wonderful. I've had some great bosses, but there are some that if you go to them and say, I don't want you to tell me how many I have to do, then they're gonna take offense at that and go, "Oh, well, who do you think is the boss?" And that might be worse for you. And when you know your employer and you know you can talk to them about it, that's great. But not every employer or supervisor is going to be open to that. If they have a certain number of things that have to get done and they have a certain number of employees doing it, they don't want to think, well, this employee doesn't want to do as much as the other people. That's the way they might interpret it. So I'd be a little careful to not be too directive toward your supervisor. When you know them, you have worked in places where you knew the people, you'd worked with them, you kind of had a sense of how you could work with them, how you could talk to them, but that's not necessarily going to be true for every line of work. So I think um, looking for a positive spin to put on what you can do and not lead off with what you can't do. Because if it's the interview level, it's very easy for them to just not hire the person that seems like, oh, they can't do as much. But as far as not disclosing, but still trying to get some supports, some people have said, I have very sensitive hearing. And because of that, it's helpful for me to wear noise canceling headphones. I'm not listening to music. I'm not listening to the ball game. It's just filtering. And I can hear, but it's filtering it so that I can process it better. They don't say, I'm autistic, so I need headphones, if they don't want to say that they're autistic. Sometimes they say, I work best in alone than with a team. So if you give me a task and I can just do it independently, that is when I can do really good work for you. That's when I can be productive. Bosses like to know about, you say productive, they like that because they want people to be productive. So rather than saying, I can't do this or I have trouble doing that, to say, I work best when, I am most productive when, and then spin it that way. A lot of people know that they're autistic and don't have a diagnosis. It can be difficult. Some places, like the one that I founded, Adult Autism Assessment, it is expensive, but there are sponsorships where you can get a reduced cost for it. And other places might also have that, or a sliding scale. But some people just know, they self-identify. You know yourself. You know what autism means. We can look online and see what the characteristics are. So if anybody tells me they're autistic, I'm just going to believe them. I'm not going to say, did you get diagnosed? No, because you know you. But in the workplace, if you want specific ADA type things, like because I'm autistic, I need these, accommodations. That's when you need to have that piece of paper where somebody else says you have a diagnosis. But if you just want to say, I work best when I'm in a quiet environment, I work best when I work alone and not on a team, you can say that without needing a diagnosis. But you know who you are, you know, and you deserve respect, and you deserve to not have to try to be somebody that you're not. I also just want to mention, at this time in 2025, a lot of people are nervous about disclosing. It's like, well, I used to be out and proud about being autistic. I would tell everyone, and all of a sudden I'm wondering, maybe I'm not as comfortable sharing it. And some are, absolutely, and continue to be. But I do want to acknowledge that if you don't feel comfortable sharing your autism, that is your right to be private. It's private information. And you don't have to tell people if you don't want to. And if you do want to say you're autistic, well, congratulations, because some of the people I've loved most in my life have been autistic. Some of my best employees have been autistic. So I think it's a great thing, but be in tune with your own comfort level in the world and where you are geographically, what it's like in your state, in your county, in your neighborhood, before you decide how much you feel comfortable disclosing. And then trust yourself, trust your gut.
Yes, excellent point. And you're right. I do want to back up and say the conversation I had was when I was getting toward the end of knowing that this job might not work for me, not at the interview stage, because Wendy is
Yes.
right. You don't want to go in and say, I can't multitask, so give me only one project at a time. I can't. Well, I can't means I can't work. And you don't want to go there. You do want to go in with what you can do. And you can say, I love that phrase, I work best when. I think that's a key phrase. I work best when. And for me, I work best when I can finish one customer's needs before starting another, which is different from saying I can't multitask.
Yes. Yes.
So that is key. Instead of saying I can't multitask, say I prefer to finish with one person's needs and then give my full attention to the next person, which is a fancier way of saying I like to give my customers full attention. Okay, let's
And your
go
employee is
on.
going to like that. Yeah.
Yes,
They value
exactly.
that.
Exactly. I'd like to finish up with one last section, Wendy, for today's conversation, and that is what I read as the middle mind gap, or what I call underemployment. And underemployment is you still have a job, you still get a paycheck, but you know you're worth more than a retail job. Or as I would say, scrubbing the floor at McDonald's. You know you're better than that. But unfortunately, what happens to many of us, and I would love to hear Wendy's help on this category, is here we are, where many of us are college graduates. We tried to go into the field where we received our degree. My degree was education. But when I learned that classroom management wasn't my strength, I then went to after school care. And when there weren't enough programs that needed me, or there weren't enough spots open, I was forced into retail. Now, this is what happens to many of us. We're needing a job, but we may not get the job in our field. And that's what they call the middle mind gap, where we're a lot smarter to get a higher level job, but because of the scare of what autism is, we may not be seen as capable of that higher level job. What do you think, Wendy?
Yeah, and that may be one of the instances where you don't want to disclose autism. I know there are a lot of people who they have an education that is so far above what their actual current job is. You know, people with master's degrees who are a handyman with, like little bulletin board notices where you tear off their phone number, and that's how they get their work. That is really underachieving. Um, and it, it's not a thing that we can solve right here. So I do want to say, if you're there, if you're saying my experience, my education is so far above the jobs I've been able to get, you're not alone. Don't beat yourself up for it. But I also want to say, don't give up on applying for the jobs within your education. And there are a lot of different kinds of jobs, like you mentioned in the field of education. Um, uh, I used to be a classroom teacher for about 20 years. I was in special ed before I went back to school and became an educational psychologist. And that when I went into teaching, they had just started. It's like my first year teaching was the first year that we had IEPs. They had just started that whole thing. And so throughout the course, my training was more like, this is how you teach. And then on the very last day of my last grad school class, they said, by the way, you're going to have to do this thing called IEP. Here's how to do it, like as an afterthought. But the way older teachers were taught is like just to teach. But now it's not just teaching, it's paperwork. There's a whole lot of legal paperwork. So people who might have wanted to be, oh, and also classroom discipline, you mentioned. It is not easy to discipline a classroom of 30 kids. And I think that's why I went straight into special ed. I loved working with a group of 8 or 10. That was my comfort level. But also there are like classroom aides. I have an aunt who, back in the day, she had trained to be a teacher. And then later, when she was widowed and she wanted to go back to work, she did not become a teacher. She became a classroom aide because that she loved working with the kids, but she did not want the headache of all of the paperwork and all that responsibility. So for her, it was a step down from what, the income might have been, but it was at her comfort level. A lot of people like being a classroom aide or a one-on-one aide. And there are other jobs within the field, like you mentioned, after-school care. Might be private schools where they're not going to pay as much. I've worked for private schools because I loved their mission and what they were about, and I did not get paid very much when I worked for them, but I learned a lot. So even if you are working at Starbucks or at Target or something, and you might want to just keep your eye on jobs that might be better paying or a better fit for you. And you can continue to keep your eye on available jobs and apply for things even while you have a job, because you can quit that job and take a new one if you can find one in your field. Don't give up on your field if you love it. But if you realize, and I've known people who did this, a girl I went to college with went all the way through and on a teaching degree, and then at the very last minute, after putting in 4 years of expensive education, did student teaching, found out she hated it. She just hated it. She never did it. She finished student teaching and then she just quit. So if you find that once you get in there, you hate it, it's too much stress, then it's okay to say, you know what? I still learned a lot. I learned and I grew as a result of my education. So nothing was wasted. And now I'm going in a different way. So whether you say, I'm going to keep trying to find something in my field, even while I'm working at Starbucks, or whether you want to say, I am going in a different direction and I'm not looking back because that is not my field. That was what I trained for, but it is not my field. And just keep going. But whichever way you go, I think it's so easy for we humans in general to beat ourselves up and to feel bad about ourselves. And that is not, it's not accurate. You really need to give yourself a break because you deserve it. And I sound like a commercial now, don't I? You deserve a break today. But it's true. Times are hard in the workplace for everybody, and they're especially hard for autistic folk. It's just difficult, and wherever you are, applaud that. Acknowledge that. Congratulations, and celebrate it. If you can't afford to go out for donut every time you achieve one of your bingo cards, I love that idea. Then, buy a dozen donuts at the grocery store for cheap or at dollar store, put them in the freezer. And then whenever you check off one of your boxes, go get one of your donuts and enjoy it.
Exactly. When I heard the idea on another YouTube channel, I'm like, that's a way that we could get over that rejection sensitivity or that just nervousness of doing an interview in the first place. And one other idea that you gave me when you were talking about that, because I was in that situation with the student teaching position and seeing that it wasn't exactly what I had in mind, which is where I went into the after school enrichment care, which really was what I love, plus Girl Scouting. another area of volunteer. You were talking about volunteering earlier. It allowed me to use my educational degree, but in a volunteer situation. Or I was also the PTO after school enrichment program, where I brought in different coaches and teachers to teach after school interest to the kids. I mean, there is a book called What Color is My Parachute? Do you remember that one?
Yes. Yes, I do. It's an old one. It's still a good one.
Exactly. Ideas on where to go from having an education degree and learning that, well, the classroom teacher idea is where I was headed. But maybe there's a step in this direction that uses that education, but not quite in the same way as Wendy was talking about. So that What Color is My Parachute might be an excellent way for you to just research some jobs that you didn't even know existed in this world.
And ask your library for that book. I can picture the cover. My parents had that book when I was young. It's been around a while. What
It's
color is
been
your
around.
parachute? Yeah.
It's been
Uh,
around a long time, and it
It's,
continues to still have a lot of value because of the
yes.
fact that as industries narrow down because of AI, which is what sometimes happens, you can now say,
Yeah.
well, that's not a dead end, that's a detour. And if you
Yeah.
think of it as a detour, okay, well, maybe this isn't the exact field, but what else can I do with my education
Yes.
or my knowledge or my lived experience or my special interest that still would take me into that same idea? And we used at the very beginning that if you love running and outdoors and sneakers and hiking and everything, you're not going to go to the bookstore. Same idea. Maybe you have interests or special experience that maybe you need to find something that might incorporate your love and find out what jobs are going to match up with that. And I
Yes.
think today we gave you a whole different list of ideas so that you're not running out to the McDonald's, the Burger Kings, or whatever, and saying, I have to have a job and I'll do whatever, because that doesn't always work. You might be there for a month, but we want to help you find something where you don't have to keep reinventing the wheel when you find something doesn't work. Wendy, do you have any final comments for today's show?
No, I think you have summed it up very well. It's been a pleasure as always, and I look forward to our next time.
That's right. Next week, Wendy and I will be talking about all the different ways that we can interview in a way that feels comfortable to us. So, interviewing requires definitely a whole segment because there are so many where we get boxed into the Q&A format where we
Yes.
don't have to necessarily be boxed. So I want to say thank you to Wendy for coming today, and I'm looking
Thank you
forward
for
to seeing
having me.
you next week. And
See
I
you
hope
then.
you'll all be back to see, now that you've discovered where your interest is going, what strengths you have, and you start to interview, you don't get that frantic, now what? Now what do I
Yes.
do? So
Yes.
I hope you'll come back for next week. And I want to say thank you for coming to the Ask Me Bridge. I hope you have a great week.